I'm doing this video just to show some soldering tips for a friend. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to solder this wire to this connector. Then I'm going to solder the wire to an LED strip over here and just use the various tools and everything that I would do to accomplish this task. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this connector ready and get it tanned up and everything. When you solder, it's very important to use flux. So I have flux here. It's actually, this is probably going to be backwards, but it's MG Chemicals Rising Flux. I just bought this. This has lasted me for probably 6, 7 years and is not even halfway gone. So I end up putting it in a syringe. There's another way you can flux your wires. You can flux wires using a paste. So this is a paste that I would use, and you'll just kind of stick the wire in there, and then you'll use the soldering iron to melt it into the wire. But again, I like using the liquid flux because I can apply it directly to wherever I need it. I'll show both methods in this video. So I'm going to put a dab of rosin flux on the connector, and a little bit goes a long way, but sometimes it's inevitable to use too much. As far as the solder, I either use Kester, or the label is ripped off this. I either use Kester 6040 rosin core solder or MG Chemicals 6040 rosin core solder. So I'm going to go ahead and get my iron. This iron is available at Home Depot. The tips are, you can buy them online on eBay, but I have a fine point tip on this for the smaller work that I do. Of course, you need something to clean your tip, so one of these cheap doodads will clean it fine. So clean my tip first. And then I'm going to go to the connection. And either you can touch the soldering iron to the connector and warm it up and then apply the solder, or you can just kind of dab a little bit on the tip. I'm kind of doing a combination of both. And so with the rosin, the flux will, like, it'll just grab onto it. Like, it just wicks onto it to where it'll tin it and you won't have any problem. And you really don't, sometimes in certain applications, you don't want to hold the iron on there too long because you'll start melting the plastic. So I apply tin to the connector, and it should be nice, shiny mirror finish. Sorry for the quality of the video, but you get what you get. All right, so now I'm gonna take my wire and I'm gonna split it depending on what size you got. It can be easier or hard to do this. I'm gonna just take off a little bit, enough to set in that gold area of the connector, so it should be like 1/8 of an inch. So take that off. Then I'm gonna do the same thing with the black side. So I have wire that's stripped. Now I'm gonna go ahead and add flux to this, and it's just like a drop of flux, and it'll wick into the wire. You can either find some way to support this wire as long as it's off, as long as it's not on any surface or whatever. You can put it in a vise or anything like that. As long as it's elevated and you're not soldering on a flat surface, burning shit up, you should be fine. I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the connector on this. So I'm just get a little bit on the tip, come to the wire, and it literally just wicks in. And just make sure I have a little bit extra on there. I'm gonna do the same thing for the other side of the wire over here. Again, it wicks in, no problem. Just checking to make sure I got good coverage all over it. So I have 10 wires. It has a little bit of rosin residue left on it. That's what's giving it that brownish color, but otherwise it's silver all the way around. It's 10, so when I go to apply it, it should, since it's coated, since it's already 10 and coated, it should mate to the surface a lot easier. In this case, I'm looking at the pack and I'm just trying to make sure I got my polarity and everything correct. So I'm just double checking that. So I'm gonna go ahead and solder the red wire in place right now. And I'm gonna set this in the little metal cup that's on this connector. It's kind of hard to see from your angle, but I'm just setting it there. Bring the iron over. Sometimes you can preheat it, just kind of dab your soldering iron in there and they'll kind of warm it up just there so it won't take so long to warm up. And when you apply it down, it should like sink into the solder pool. So in this case, I really don't have a lot of solder in there, but I did get it tacked in there. And tacking it means it's like it's a good connection, but you possibly want to go back with a little bit more solder to fill things out. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna just take that, put a dollop of solder on there, and it's like basically I'm melting a little ball on there. And then I'm gonna come back with my iron and melt it in to where the joint and the ball and everything is just one solid piece, and it's gonna be nice, shiny, and professional looking. But here it is. I did a rookie mistake right here. I soldered the connection before I put heat shrink on, which I need heat shrink to cover this connector, so I'm gonna have to unsolder this. And even me, I've done this for years and I still forget to do it every time. So I got some heat shrink over here. All I need a little piece. I'm gonna go ahead and cut a black piece and cut them about the same size as well. So I cut my pieces, spread this a little more, slide that over, and then go back to resoldering this. And one of the things about soldering, like sometimes you'll have good wire. This is like silicone wire, so I don't have to worry about heat. But when you have that really cheap wire, you can't put the heat on it long. Like I said, right now I'm preheating that area over there to make it easier. Bringing the wire over. Gentle pressure, it should sink into the solder. And it should be attached. Go ahead and get this heat shrink, put it on the black. Probably gonna get me a little bit more solder on this connection over here. All right. Clamp this a little bit more in my vise. Bring this wire in over here. All right, so I got that wire in place. Now I'm gonna clean up again. I might add a little bit more solder. I'm just cleaning up my connection here, making it nice, shiny. Make sure there's plenty of solder in there to handle the current. Making it look good and professional. Might not have to do this, but for this connector, I'm gonna just go ahead and make sure it's pimped out to the T. All right, so you'll have, sometimes you may have a little droopage, which you can kind of see. I'm just come back on the other side of the connector and I'm gonna let gravity do most of the work for me. Sometimes I can either melt this and it drips off, or you can flick it off, but in that case it dripped off. Just smooth everything up, make sure there ain't no jagged edges. The heat shrink is gonna cover up my sins, but you'll kind of get something that looks like this. Video doesn't do it justice, but it's, trust me, it's a good, solid, adequate connection. I'm gonna go ahead and slide my heat shrink over my connection. Just blowing on it so the heat shrink doesn't shrink prematurely. So pushing that up on there. So what happened a little bit is that heat shrunk prematurely a little bit, but it's on there. I got it relatively pushed up and even on both sides. So I'm gonna take my heat gun and heat shrink that. All right, so it looks sort of like that. All right, so it's heat shrinked on. I don't have to worry about any shorts on that connector. So, and I could probably put another thing of heat shrink on this to kind of, make it even better. But we're gonna go to the other end. We need to strip this, take off about 1/8 of an inch, and this is what's gonna go to the LED strip. And you really don't need a lot for this. It don't even have to be 1/8 of an inch. Twist the ends up a little bit. And I'm gonna use some flux. All right. And I'm just elevating a little bit. Cleaning the tip because it wasn't taking solder, so I'm cleaning the tip. Now I just took it perfectly. All right, so I got one side done. Flip it over, get the other side. Now this wire size is overkill for this LED strip. This is like some 14 gauge wire, I believe. So it's overkill. The thing is, we got this 10. It's ready to go. It's ready to solder onto the LED strip, and it's ready to plug into this battery. I'm just double check, make sure my colors are good. Colors are good, so when I plug it in, it should be ready to go. This is 12-volt LED strip, and I can do the whole roll, and I'll probably just go ahead and solder to the whole roll so the whole roll lights up. So it'll be a little bit more dramatic. This one has that soft material over the LEDs. I'm gonna just score it all the way down to the strip, and hopefully I can peel it off. But I'm exposing those tabs right there. So I scored it. I cut through the clear part, peeling it off. So I got that exposed. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to apply that flux to both of those pads. Just a little drop. That's all you need. All right, so I'm getting my soldering iron. And let me put something else over here. I got my soldering iron, and I'm gonna clean it, get a little bit on the tip, and then I'm gonna go down to the pad, and it should, with the flux and everything, it should tend this pad rather quickly. So, all right, so I got one done. The good thing about the flux, the surface tension will help you out. It'll gravitate and grab onto the pad. So right now we got 2 balls of solder on there. I'll show the camera. So we got 2 balls of solder. The brown stuff is the rosin flux that we put on there, and then some of it is a little bit of the, I wouldn't say the tape burning, but it did kind of melt slightly. So, all right, so I'm gonna grab my connector here, just make sure the polarity is good. I gotta use my magnifying glass. All right, so positive is on my right side. So I'm gonna flip this over and line that red wire up. Apply sufficient pressure so that when it melts, it'll automatically float down onto that connector. Clean tip, like again, if you go in there with a dirty tip, the tip oxidizes rather quickly, so clean tip, hold it on there, apply gentle pressure. All right, that's tacked on. Give it a few seconds to cool off. So now I can move that around. Now, sometimes whenever, like, it's very close, I can probably do this. I was going to pull out a tool or some tweezers to show that you can kind of grab this wire with tweezers and hold it down. But clean my tip again, go over here, put it on the joint, push down, let go. The wires are tacked on. Just making sure there's no shorts, that it's not touching the other pad. Because again, this is some thick wire. So that looks good. Again, the wires is too big for this, but it's not all that I have, but it's what I had close by. So this dongle and everything is ready to be connected to the battery. Just double checking one more time. That should be good. So I'm gonna plug it into this pack. Hopefully that don't blow up. Black, black, red, red. Sure. All right, so the LED strip is lit up. No issue. What I'll probably do is either go back with some hot glue or some shrink wrap. That's another thing, you probably could have put some shrink wrap over that, especially if the wires were smaller and you know those connections weren't nowhere touching. You can just put a dab of either like some silicone or something, and then cover up with some heat shrink. Then you know that wire is good to go for the long haul. But yeah, I got this whole strip lit up. That should be it. If you have any more questions or you need me to go in more high depth detail, then I'll go ahead and do that.